In the southern part of the relic continent, atop a fragment of land, a vast forest stretched endlessly into the distance. Towering ancient trees filled this dense woodland, their canopy alive with the distant cries of spirit beasts, warning travelers of the dangers lurking within. As night fell, a small campfire flickered in a secluded corner of the forest, pushing back the surrounding darkness. Gathered around it sat 6 figures, including Xiao. The other 5 consisted of 3 young men, a woman, and a timid girl. The cause of their recent peril. Xiao had saved them because he sensed a familiar, sinister aura related to poison emanating from the girl. This aura was chilling, deeply penetrating, and reminiscent of the poison energy he knew from the little fairy doctor. However, the girl's poison was even more terrifying, capable of intimidating even 7th or 8th grade supreme experts. In the continent of Dou Qi, even powerful Dou Di would hesitate to approach it. Fortunately, some force had sealed the poison within the girl, preventing it from leaking out. Xiao Yan's detection of this power suggested that whoever had placed the seal was no stronger than an Earth Supreme. On behalf of the Xun'er sect, we thank you for saving us, one young man said, addressing Xiao Yan. They were deeply grateful for his intervention, especially since it meant defying Xinling Hall. I was just passing by and couldn't stand by while bullies preyed on the weak, Xiao Yan replied, his eyes drifting toward the girl. Besides, her constitution intrigued me. The young men were stunned. The girl, Yirong, was the daughter of the Xun'er sect master, as was the woman beside her, Tianlian. Yirong was born with a divine poison body, so potent that the poison had claimed the life of their mother, who had reached the heaven-connecting stage. To contain this immense toxicity, the sect master had placed multiple seals on Yirong, 4 in total, until even supreme experts could no longer detect the poison. The youths were amazed that Xiao Yan could sense her divine poison body. However, they quickly realized that Xiao Yan's power far exceeded that of their sect master, who was only in the early stages of the 9th grade supreme, whereas Xiao Yan was an Earth Supreme. One young man explained, Yirong learned years ago that her poison killed her mother. Since then, she's been terrified of her own power, becoming withdrawn and fearful. Xiao Yan nodded, understanding. It reminded him of the little fairy doctor, who had similarly isolated herself to avoid harming others. She hasn't spoken, he observed. One of the 4 seals suppresses her voice, another youth revealed. Xiao Yan smiled gently. In my home dimension, I had a friend with a similar poison constitution. She grew stronger by continually absorbing poison. If you can master this power, you'll be a force even Earth Supremes would fear. Xinling Hall knew about her divine poison body and came after her, one youth said grimly. They traveled billions of miles from the mystic spirit heaven region, planning to invade the 8 Kings region in the south of the relic continent. Ancient royal court? Is it a powerful force? Xiao Yan asked curiously after hearing the young man's words. Based on what the young man had just mentioned, the ancient royal court distributed 500,000 supreme spiritual liquids annually to each of the 8 superpowers in the southern region of the relic continent. This meant they gave away 4 million supreme spiritual liquids each year. Such generosity was unimaginable for an ordinary power. Back on the central heaven continent, the Grand Myriad Heavenly Palace, one of the top 5 dominating forces of the Great Thousand Worlds and a superpower among the 10 major continents, struggled immensely to gather 10 million supreme spiritual liquids. It was clear that the ancient royal court was even stronger than the Grand Myriad Heavenly Palace. The ancient royal court is one of the 3 dominant powers currently ruling this entire relic continent. It is also the most ancient among them, controlling both the southern and eastern regions of the continent, the young man explained to Xiao Yan, who had only been in the Great Thousand Worlds for a year or 2. Despite his formidable strength, Xiao Yan was still unfamiliar with much of the world's intricacies. To think that the ancient royal court was the most powerful force on the relic continent tens of thousands of years ago, the young man continued, it was guarded by 8 heavenly supremes and dozens of earthly supremes. Their strength rivaled ancient powerhouses such as the Ice God clan, now the Ice Spirit clan, the Flame God clan, now the Fire Spirit clan, the Thunder God clan, the Wood God clan, and even the present-day Primordial Divine clans. Oh? Then, did the ancient royal court decline over time? Xiao asked. Once a dominant force ruling the entire relic continent, the ancient royal court now stood alongside two other powers. It seemed that even the mightiest sects faced eventual decline, much like the Luo god clan. If it was merely a decline, the ancient royal court wouldn't have fallen to the point of relying on distributing supreme spiritual liquids to maintain its influence, the young man replied with a bitter smile. Something significant must have happened, Xiao mused aloud. The young man looked at Xiao and asked, since you hail from a lower dimension, do you know of the extraterritorial evil clan? Xiao nodded in response. Although the continent of Dou Qi had not been discovered by the extraterritorial evil clan, Xiao learned about their immense threat upon arriving in the Great Thousand Worlds. Luo Heavenly God, the old patriarch of the Luo God clan, had warned him that the extraterritorial evil clan posed a deadly menace to both lower dimensions and the Great Thousand Worlds. Tens of thousands of years ago, during the Apocalypse War launched by the extraterritorial evil clan against the Great Thousand Worlds and the lower dimensions, the evil clan's army reached the relic continent. Everyone believed the ancient royal court would unite the continent and fight to the death. Instead, the ancient royal court, the pillar and leader of the entire continent, was the first to flee with its army. The evil clan's invasion turned into a full-scale assault, and the relic continent's defenses collapsed. In just 3 months, the relic continent, ranked second or third among the Great Thousand Worlds continents, was completely overrun. Even the extraterritorial evil clan was stunned by how quickly it happened. Xiao couldn't help but laugh at the tale. If that was true, the ancient royal court truly became a laughingstock for the Great Thousand Worlds. Xiao speculated that the ancient royal court's downfall was due to the aftermath of the Apocalypse War. The disdain from the Great Thousand Worlds likely caused a mass exodus of talents, which was the greatest reason for the decline of any major sect. Before long, Xiao speculation was confirmed. After the Apocalypse War, many powerful figures announced their departure from the ancient royal court. Among the 8 original heavenly supremes, 3 perished in battles against the extraterritorial evil clan, possibly sparking the initial retreat. With only 5 heavenly supremes left, 3 of them eventually left the ancient royal court to establish their own forces. One of these new factions, formed on the relic continent, became the Primordial God clan, which now rivals the weakened ancient royal court as one of the 3 dominant powers. A split within the force. It's no less than what they deserved, Xiao remarked with a smirk. It seemed the Great Thousand Worlds was full of fascinating stories, most of which involved the extraterritorial evil clan. Before long, Xiao knew he would confront the terrifying clan, a super-evil force dwelling in the extraterritorial realms and seen as barbarians by the Great Thousand Worlds. The conflict between the extraterritorial realms and the Great Thousand Worlds had been one of life and death since their inception. Yet, the extraterritorial evil clan's persistent invasions underscored their aggressive nature. In my dimension, we've never experienced an attack by the extraterritorial evil clan, so I've yet to see how terrifying they are, Xiao said thoughtfully. Then, shifting his focus, he asked, who is the 3rd dominant power on this relic continent, besides the ancient royal court and the primordial god clan? The 3rd dominant power? The young men exchanged glances before one of them smiled and said, I almost forgot. Why? Xiao asked. Having been in the Great Thousand Worlds for less than 2 years, he couldn't fathom any connection between himself and this so-called 3rd Great Hegemonic Force. Because the founder of this 3rd Great Hegemonic Force, or rather, the ancestor of its founder, came from a lower dimension, the young man replied with a chuckle. Though not necessarily from the same lower dimension as you, it does create a slight connection, doesn't it? Xiao was left speechless. A connection just because they both originated from a lower dimension? By that logic, the few young men in front of him, being male like himself, would also qualify as related. However, this 3rd Great Hegemonic Force wasn't established by humans. It was created tens of thousands of years ago by the descendants of a powerful divine beast that broke through the dimensional barrier from the lower dimension. This divine beast now ranks as the 15th most powerful on the 10,000 Beasts record heavenly rankings, and is the fourth strongest among all dragon-type divine beasts, the young man continued. Dragon-type? Xiao Yin inquired. Indeed. Since its founding 10,000 years ago, this race has been dedicated to one task, searching for the dimension their ancestor originally hailed from, the young man explained. Their ancestor didn't leave them any information about their original dimension? Xiao Yin asked. Strangely, he found himself intrigued by the notion of a dimensional barrier breaker unaware of their own origins. It was quite the oddity. Apparently, their ancestor intended to leave that information behind, but due to an unexpected calamity, both the ancestor and all the other powerful beings who came from the same dimension perished. Their records, along with their entire sect, were utterly destroyed. The current hegemonic force is essentially a reconstruction, the young man explained further. That's unfortunate. For those of us who come from the lower dimensions, knowing our origin is as vital as knowing our parents, Xiao Yin nodded, sharing in their regret. Their continued search for their origins underscored their deep yearning to determine if their ancestral dimension still existed. What is this race? Xiao Yin asked. The young man's answer sent a jolt through Xiao Yin, leaving him in stunned silence. The Primordial Ancient Dragon Clan. Primordial Ancient Dragon. When the words reached Xiao Yan's ears, his heart skipped a beat. The Primordial Ancient Dragon Clan? How could this name so closely resemble the clan of primordial ancient dragons from the continent of Dou Qi, a clan that surpassed even the Sky Demon Phoenix clan and 9 Nether Earth Underworld Python clan in dominance among magical beasts? Moreover, according to the young man, the primordial ancient dragon clan of this relic continent originated from a lower dimension. This information made Xiao Yin suspect that the primordial ancient dragon clan of the relic continent might indeed be the same as that of the continent of Dou Qi. If true, the ancestors of this clan on the relic continent were likely the very beings who broke through the dimensional barrier from the continent of Dou Qi. Xiao Yin then recalled a legend well known across the continent of Dou Qi. In ancient times, the continent of Dou Qi was vast and thriving, home to countless clans. During that era, numerous powerful figures emerged, and there were no fewer than dozens of forces ruled by Dou Di powerhouses. Later, for unknown reasons, the Dou Di powerhouses who dominated various regions of the continent of Dou Qi inexplicably vanished without a trace, leaving behind no legacy. It was as if they had disappeared overnight. From then on, Dou Di powerhouses became mere legends. The only tangible record of one was the sudden appearance of the Tuasha Ancient Emperor. Although the Tuasha Ancient Emperor also disappeared from the continent of Dou Qi, unlike the ancient Dou Dis, he left behind an ancient emperor's cave mansion. Thousands of years later, with the treasures left in the cave mansion, both the Hun Tiandi and Xiao Yin ascended to the legendary Dou Di realm. In the ensuing battle between the two, the world was thrown into chaos. At great personal cost, Xiao Yin burned his Dou Di body to seal Hun Tiandi, solidifying his position as the strongest on the continent of Dou Qi. After decades of further cultivation, Xiao Yin finally reached the dimensional barrier and broke through. At that moment, sensing the existence of the Great Thousand Worlds, Xiao Yin thought he had uncovered the reason behind the disappearance of the Dou Dis. Later, in the Great Thousand Worlds, he learned that the Tuasha Ancient Emperor, who broke through the barrier thousands of years ago, had become a clan-protecting flame for the Fire Spirit clan. This revelation further confirmed Xiao Yan's belief that those ancient Dou Dis might have already established sects across the Great Thousand Worlds. The sudden information turned all of Xiao Yan's expectations into ashes, leaving him dazed for over 10 breaths before regaining his composure. If what the young man said was true, and if the Taishu Ancient Dragon Clan on the Relic Continent was indeed the continuation of the Taishu Ancient Dragon Clan from the continent of Dou Qi, then wouldn't it mean that his ancestors had perished entirely due to some unforeseen calamity? And wouldn't it also mean that all the Dou Di powerhouses had been reduced to ashes 10,000 years ago, leaving only a single bloodline continuing to survive in the Great Thousand Worlds? After snapping back to his senses, Xiao Yin immediately asked, "Are you certain that the third overlord on the Relic Continent is the Taishu Ancient Dragon Clan?" The young man and his companions, seeing Xiao Yan's sudden strange reaction, couldn't help but find it baffling. "Yes, what about it?" they replied. "Oh, nothing. Xiao Yin gradually suppressed the shock in his heart. He couldn't yet confirm if the Taishu ancient dragon clan the youth mentioned was the same Taishu ancient dragon clan known as the strongest magical beast clan on the continent of Dou Qi. Thus, he didn't dare to recklessly voice his conjectures. However, one thing was clear. He had to visit the Taishu ancient dragon clan on the relic continent. He needed to witness the truth for himself. Do you know where the Taishu ancient dragon clan is located on the relic continent? Xiao Yin asked. The relic continent is made up of countless fragmented continents. However, 13 of the largest and most prominent continents are collectively known as the 13 heavenly regions. The Taishu ancient dragon clan resides in the northern dragon emperor heavenly region of the relic continent. They also control 3 surrounding heavenly regions, the young man explained. Then, he asked, why? Are you planning to visit the Taishu ancient dragon clan? There are some matters I need to verify with them, Xiao Yin replied. He then turned his gaze to Yirong, who had remained silent all this time, and said, give me your hand. The young men and women nearby looked at Xiao Yin with confusion, clearly unsure what he intended to do with Yirong. However, Yi Tianlian, trusting Xiao Yin, urged her to comply. Hesitantly, Yirong extended her hand toward Xiao Yin. Seeing Yirong's outstretched hand, Xiao Yin smiled faintly and took it. Then, under the watchful gazes of the surrounding youths, a crimson light began to radiate from Xiao Yan's palm. It was an extraordinarily terrifying fiery power. Buzz. As the crimson light emanated from Xiao Yan's hand, purplish-black spots began to emerge on Yirong's skin. These spots, like bone-boring parasites, clung stubbornly to her. As the spots surfaced, Yirong's expression grew increasingly pained, clearly indicating that these spots were the manifestation of her congenital toxic body. This is the most potent poison I've ever encountered. If it were to erupt fully, not even an 8th grade supreme could endure it, Xiao Yin remarked. For a poison capable of earning such a description from a powerhouse who had reached the Earth's supreme level, it was undoubtedly beyond the scope of ordinary toxins. Hearing this, the youths and young women nearby couldn't help but feel a chill. A poison that even an 8th grade supreme couldn't withstand? How terrifying would that be if it erupted? Wouldn't ye wrong? Xiao Yan's expression turned grim as he stared at the increasingly prominent poison spots on Yirong's body. Then, with a thought, a surge of heavenly flame entered Yirong's body. However, Xiao Yin exercised excellent control, ensuring that the terrifying power of the flame did not harm her in the slightest. Within a dozen breaths, Xiao Yin had infused his fiery energy throughout Yirong's body. He locked onto every visible, hidden, and even nascent poison spot. Step back, Xiao Yin instructed the surrounding youths. I've never tried this method before, but her toxic body has not reached its eruption stage. This is a chance worth taking. The group obeyed, retreating to a distant mountain peak 1,000 feet away. Though they didn't understand what Xiao Yin meant by method, they assumed it was meant to counteract Yirong's toxic constitution. Despite their concern for Yirong, they trusted Xiao Yin, a genuine Earth Supreme powerhouse, to have a way to handle her poison. Let's see just how arrogant this toxic body can be, Xiao Yin murmured, his gaze sharpening. It's been years since I've dealt with a toxic body after Little Fairy Doctor. And it's been quite a while since I last refined any medicine, Xiao Yin added with a grin. Billowing flames erupted from within Xiao Yin, causing the temperature within a 1,000-mile radius to rise sharply. For the young men present, this heat was nothing significant, but for Yirong, who hadn't even reached the heaven-merging stage, it was terrifying. The roaring flames swept across the sky, transforming into a giant fire cauldron 100 meters tall before the eyes of the youths. Using fire as a cauldron, this was a skill only high-level alchemists possessed. Forming a cauldron from fire? What's he trying to do? The youths exclaimed in shock as they watched Xiao Yin create the giant cauldron. How was this related to Yirong's poisonous body? They didn't know that Xiao Yan's plan was to use the fire cauldron, with Yirong as the material, to refine her into a super poison master who could fully control her toxic body. This idea was insane. Even when Xiao Yin had reached the Dou Qi realm and became an imperial-grade alchemist, he hadn't dared attempt such a thing. But after advancing to the Earth's supreme level, he had surpassed the typical realm of alchemists. With his advanced alchemy skills, this seemingly impossible plan might succeed. Xiao Yin had even begun preparations to resurrect Xiao Xin, but was still uncertain about the method. Boom! The giant fire cauldron hovered in the sky, surrounded by flames that coiled like enormous fire dragons. The intense heat warped the space around the cauldron. Xiao Yin knew that if Yirong touched this level of heat now, she would be reduced to ashes instantly. Considering this, Xiao Yin flicked a spirit pill into Yirong's mouth. The pill emitted a chilling aura and, though it was only a 9th-tier pill, it was more than sufficient for her. Upon entering her mouth, the pill transformed into pure, soothing cold spiritual energy, flowing through her body and neutralizing the surrounding flames. Despite this, Yirong was only at the divine soul stage. The neutralized energy was still too overwhelming, triggering the toxins within her body to resist violently. Overwhelmed by the pain, her frail body gave out, and she fainted. The nearby youths and women saw Yirong collapse, their worry intensifying. They could only place their hopes in Xiao Yin now. Huff. Xiao Yin exhaled deeply. Yirong's fainting had been expected and was, in fact, the outcome he wanted. A conscious Yirong might struggle, increasing the risk of failure in this alchemy. Let's begin, Xiao Yin murmured. With a wave of his sleeve, spiritual energy enveloped Yirong and sent her into the fire cauldron. Boom! As soon as she entered, the flames within the cauldron surged violently. Xiao Yin raised his hand, and from his storage ring, hundreds of high-grade medicinal ingredients emerged, flying toward the cauldron. Each one was a rare treasure in the continent of Dou Qi. The watching youths were stunned as they realized Xiao Yin was refining a person. One of them gasped, his voice filled with disbelief. Using a person as material to forge a divine body. This is a heavenly alchemist. In the Great Thousand Worlds, many sects renowned for their alchemy skills existed, with the Pill God clan and the Eternal Grasslands being the most famous. Alchemists were ranked from 1st to 9th tier, similar to the system in the continent of Dou Qi. Above them were earthly alchemists, equivalent to imperial-grade alchemists. However, the highest rank belonged to heavenly alchemists, figures so revered that even Earth's supreme experts treated them with utmost respect. The defining skill of a heavenly alchemist was the ability to refine not just medicine but people. It was said that the most advanced heavenly alchemists could even restore a fragmented soul, complete with its original form and memories.